I keep my focus on what we're doing,
Yeah.
moving our family forward. And then that's my encouragement to a lot of people during this is how you moving your family forward. There's a ton of focus on fixing the world or fixing America when people have plenty of problems right at their own house. So,
yeah. I was talking. One of my friends is the Minneapolis fire captain, and so I had him on an episode last week, and he happens to be a black guy. So I got his take on everything that happened. And he's like, dude, it was crazy. We had to have police and military escorts just to go put fires out. So it was safe for us to do it.
Crazy, man.
It's like, this is nuts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild.
But, so how'd you get started on your journey to like football? I listened to your episode on the Killcliff podcast yesterday just to get more of a background because I haven't gotten to see you in like 3 years.
Yeah.
And so how'd you get started? Fitness, life, health, wellness, all that sort of stuff, becoming like motivational speaker now, moving your family forward, all that good stuff.
Well, I do two main things. My main profession right now is an independent financial advisor.
Okay.
So I started my own shop, Pro Capital Wealth Management, and excuse me, and then I do speaking gigs on the side. And so I had a lot of different things went on in our lives and mine. And so we had kind of after I finished playing, I grew up Washington State, went to school in Montana, played with the Detroit Lions, Dallas Cowboys, and Miami Dolphins. And Miami ended up having a career-ending injury, which led to a whole lot of surgeries, which ended up finishing my degree in psychology and having to get a job at Killcliff in their sales department, selling for them. Excuse me. And so kind of working my way through some stuff, but ended up it was a great growing season for me, but also during that time, we lost somebody close to us that we love in a big way. And so ended up getting invited to church here in Keller, Texas, called Milestone Church, and ended up having a pretty powerful vision of my nephew who we lost to cancer. And so through that, was kind of a segue I share with people that wasn't like, hey, that wasn't my giving my life to Christ right there. It was a powerful moment to bring down the wall and that's where I could show up the next week. And so that became a catalyst of movement for my life, post football, in marriage, in my profession, and ultimately what led to speaking gigs. And I share that on purpose because a lot of people, we kind of sit, most people in our nation sit in this place where they're very reactive emotionally, and they let those feelings dictate their action instead of some sort of foundational element in their life or a foundational belief that they've predetermined to stick to. And when you don't do that, you fall wayside to anything that comes across your path, right? And so, like this current climate that we have going on with the division and that's happening in our life, are you getting absolutely ticked off? Which some emotions are justified, absolutely right, but emotions are indicators, not dictators. So it's an indication of what's going on inside of you. And a lot of times, if you're supposed to change, which you are, but if God's trying to lead you to a path, a better place, he's gonna usually take you through a test to get to the testimony, right? He's gonna take you through hell to make sure that you know what heaven looks like. And the thing is if you give in to the emotions, the distractions the enemy is trying to pitch at you while you're walking in that, you get distracted and you get stuck. And so what's been so cool is, and I say that because my faith journey, when we started going to church, I was getting in small groups, and I didn't have any sort of acknowledgement of like, yeah, I believed in God, didn't really care. We lost somebody we love, trying to figure out my life. I got my wife and our baby girl at the time, and now we have two. But I'm walking through this, and what started happening was, all of a sudden I started becoming a consumer, like a massive consumer of anything I could get my hands on, literature, books, podcasts, messages, TED Talks, anything and everything that I was consuming. And so, and a lot of spiritual, a lot of revelation, personal revelation in my life that was hitting me hard from past events, current events that have happened in my life, mistakes that I've made, big moves that I've made that have been positive and had powerful impacts that resonated throughout, and so, or other people have made. And so, but because I became this massive consumer, all of a sudden, you and I would have a conversation where before I was always an outgoing guy, but I was relatively quiet. I didn't have much to say. But now that I'm this massive consumer, basically I'm filling up my cup like crazy, is now what I'm bringing to the table has a whole lot of substance. And not to say I don't know everything, can't take that at all. But you can't pour. So many people in this world are trying to pour from an empty cup. They're trying to come from a position of power when they have none. You know, and so when you're trying to pour from an empty cup, you know, I'm trying to argue my point over you when I have no substance behind it. If I have no substance behind it, it's purely emotionally manufactured. And where emotions are powerful and can be used to emphasize points for sure, when it's just emotionally manufactured, it falls flat and deflates really fast. And what happens? I end up getting more frustrated because I can't prove my point thoroughly, and I can't get people on my team. And so, but I share that. But I went through that process where all of a sudden I was a huge consumer, and because of that, I've always been involved in my portfolio. So I went through the financial side, and I can help people practically because I've walked through that in my life already. Those practical pieces of your financial life, building a budget, sticking to knowing what you're spending, what you're making, the cash flow of the household, to investments, to a whole portfolio, right? And then into the speaking, I had to craft that a little more, but it came really naturally just because of what I was consuming all the time, like consuming daily. And so I would encourage anybody that's kind of coming through that. That's been a huge pusher and driver in my life, is if I know if I have nothing to say to you, I need to go back and fill up. Right? And if I don't have a response, it's not bad. That means I need to listen. And so that means I need to collect more. And so so many people are so quick, right? It's in our nature. I studied psychology in college, and social psych was one of my favorite classes. But one of the biggest things they talk about is your perspective is different than mine naturally. Right. So if I see you walking across the street, you know, say you're walking down the sidewalk and you trip over a rock, what do you attribute that trip over? Well, you attribute to the rock. You're like, shoot, I tripped over the rock. If I'm watching from across the street, you know, and I see you trip, I attribute it to you being clumsy. And so there's totally different perspectives when I didn't necessarily see the rock, right? And so both have to clash. It's this iron sharpening iron mentality. I have to hear your story to understand where you're coming from. You have to hear mine to understand where I'm coming from. And it's not one side or the other, but this is a coming together. And this is not to say there has an agreement to take place, but you will both end up expanding your territory or domain on this planet, or even just in your community, by understanding each other a whole lot better. And all of that, I know this is a mouthful what I'm pouring out right now, but all of that ends up creating a lot more powerful platform to be able to talk to people on. And you know, the football thing was cool, right? Played with the Dallas Cowboy 6 years in the NFL, but that didn't get people's attention. It got some. Definitely got some, but that didn't hold their attention. Right? It was all of a sudden where I got asked a question where somebody would message me on Facebook or message me or text me or something like, what you said today really hit. And so, and I know especially during this time, so many emotions are spinning around. One is rage or vengeance or anger of some sort. You know, the biggest thing we could do is, I know I'm a big meathead, right? I want to go loud and fast. So a big thing that I have to do is check my own heart by, you know, I read a chapter out of scripture every day. I usually read a chapter out of some book that I'm consuming, and it usually hits me, whatever I'm consuming hits me at the level I'm dealing with at that current moment. And it provides a whole lot of perspective and usually clarity in how I deal with people moving forward. So that was a lot. I don't know if that was what you wanted.
That was awesome. That was awesome, Cory. Like, you said that you consume so much now to like fill your cup. Like, that's another reason. Like, I knew you had a big story to tell, like, other than just football. And so now you're filling my cup and everybody else is through this. So whatever words of wisdom you want to share, just don't be afraid, just let it all out. But who inspired you like growing up, and who inspires you now to keep motivating people and helping people like build their portfolios, stuff like that?
Well, man, there are a lot of contributors in my life. And I think growing up, my parents split, much like a lot of people, and they both remarried. Love my step parents, so it was a kind of an interesting dynamic coming up. We moved around a lot, and it wasn't the most pleasant split. I love my parents to death, and they know what's gone on. But the coaches in my life, both my parents are powerful influences, no doubt. But coaches were huge when I needed that during that time. And so, you know, those conversations, they're, you know, whatever they would share with me if I was struggling. Both my wrestling coaches passed away in the last eight or 9 months, and both of them were really powerful in my life. One of them, his name was Raul, and Sarah was a short little Greek jack dude, and he would talk to me when I was struggling going through that. And I remember thinking what he was saying didn't sound like it made any sense at the time, but just the fact that he could talk about a lot of different dynamics of it, but just the fact that he was willing to sit with me and go through what I was going through, his heart would come out with that. And so because he took that time, he ended up being a powerful influence in my life. And what was neat was when he passed, all of a sudden, I'm being included on tons of group text messages, group Facebook messages, seeing all these memories come out of all these other students that had been affected by him. And so it was a huge deal. So coaches were massive. My brothers, I think some, you know, even reflecting back, you know, some people don't get the credit that they should. My brothers are huge in that. And what's so neat about it is we've had lots of ups and downs, times we haven't talked, times where we were great. And what's neat is he's persevering through all those tough times to today. I've never had better relationships than I have now with my brothers. I'm middle of 3 boys. I have step family too. I love them to death, right? I think the kind of the term step in that family sense it doesn't quite give them the justice that they deserve or the weight that they've had in your life. But my brothers are huge. My older brother Clay, my younger brother Casey, huge pieces of my life, and they've proven in their own story to be massive fighters, and seeing what they've walked through, and that's taken a big relationship with God for me, right? Because before, pre-relationship or pre-faith for me, I was very much stuck in my own ways. Proverbs 3:5 was the first one to ever hit me. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and soul, lean not on your own understanding." And it's a pretty popular proverb, but it's huge. It hit me one time because I was at a time coming out of football, trying to figure out who I was, losing somebody that we love like crazy, someone young, taking the whole world on my shoulders. And And I can respect somebody who comes into that attitude. I really can, because we have an active, very active part in this life to walk out what we're supposed to be called to do. But you can't do it all. Right? One of the biggest lies in our society is you can do whatever you want. You can be whatever you want to be. Well, that's not true, right? You can do whatever God's called you to do. I can't be the Queen of England, right? I can't be some of these other things, because I wasn't born for that. We're born for a very specific purpose, and part of your life's journey is to figure out what that purpose in tandem with God is, because the one who made you. And the tough thing about it is okay, if we, the fearful place is we can't control fully that view, that purview, that somebody else has made me, somebody else has control potentially over my life, right? Has some sort of influence, and a lot of us struggle with that, because I want full control, and I still want. That's something I still struggle with. I want full control, but the thing is you can't control the disasters that go on in life. I can't control other people. I can't control the cop, that sat on the guy's neck in Minneapolis, right? I can't control the rioters that are going crazy right now. I can't control all these people. You know what I can control is I can't even control fully my wife or my family, right? But I can control myself. And this has the biggest influence on my direct circle around me, that I can influence, and then I can have an impact on. And so when I had that realization, when I had got a relationship with God, is when all of a sudden I gained the perspective that it wasn't about me anymore. And because we're walking through these tough times, and I couldn't understand why he would take me away from the game that I was made to play. I had so much more juice left in the tank. Why did he take this perfect gift in this child off this earth away from my brother and his wife? Why are all these bad things happening? Well, I can't explain all that. I have to relinquish control of that, right? I can't control that, but I can control exactly what I'm consuming and what kind of relationship I have. And he's communicated to me in that. And so what's cool has been coming out of those storms, because I've had that relationship with him. I've gotten a way clearer picture. I'm not any biblical scholar, but way clearer picture of what he wants out of me, to provide vision for my family, to be a steward of their growth. I have to make sure my wife is growing, my kids are growing, I'm growing. Otherwise they won't. I have to be a steward of that, to provide vision, provision for them. Obviously, I have to go out and work and find money to put food on the table. But if I have no vision, my people will perish. And so we collectively were working towards something. But all of a sudden, I had totally different perspective, because it was more about them than me. Right? I have a bigger vision for Pro Capital, my business. And because I have a bigger vision for that, people start getting attracted to it, and they want me to share on their platforms. And that's where the speaking started coming in. Right? That's why I say speaking is on the side, because I'm not somebody to make some action happen in their life or to become closer to God, or realize that he is not out to harm you. He's out to uphold you. Right? And so when you realize that, what's been cool with me is there's a real stark contrast in the perception and the mindset, and because of that foundation, in the action and words that come out. So we walked through my nephew's cancer, which was really, really hard for us. And so I went totally down to this place, FU mentality to God, right? Blowing up the finger at him. Like, you can go to hell. You don't want to do this? I'll do this myself. Well, get into a relationship with him, got an invite to a church. So now I'm in this environment where he can work with me, and meets me very vividly one day. And so I get in this consumer place where I'm eating as much as I possibly can, scripture and everything else. And I start understanding what's going on. What's so neat about that is when I know that I walk by faith, not by sight, I know that he's got my back, even when I don't feel like he's got my back. I will walk through this life in a totally different manner. So my older brother Clay, not too long ago, this last December, I find out he has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So now he's got to go through cancer treatment, do the port in the chest. start losing his hair, all these crazy things. Okay. And he told me the news the day after our new baby boy was born. Told me that news driving back to the hospital with our baby girl, and our son Hank had just been born. So this is an enemy trying to attack a beautiful time in our life. Not my brother, right? Different kind of enemy that tries to weigh down on here and get you pissed off in the time that you shouldn't be pissed off. And so he tells me this news, and he shares me, all right, what's the plan? Some questions around it. What's going on? Next steps. All good. Before we get off the phone, I said, all right, can I pray for you right now? Can I say a prayer? And he says, yeah, sure. And I go, all right, this is when we pray. And I start asking, all right, Father, we know we don't know what's going on in this world. We don't know, we can't tell, we can't control everything. We submit it to you. We give this to you right now, whatever the future holds in this right now, but we're going to walk by faith, not by sight. We're going to walk with our chest out, not with our chest down, defeated, but chest up in victory, because we know we're going to win through you in this moment, whatever the outcome is going to be. And we're going to walk proud in this time frame and not deflated in this time frame. And just by that injection of prayer and bringing the Spirit in a moment just like that, all of a sudden, totally different atmosphere has just been created. Right? And so now what was cool is we get done, amen, that's it. And he goes, all right. And so now he's got some juice to move forward. And so what's neat about that sustains us to it for a different level. But what's cool, why I say that is, since I've been come into a relationship with God and started understanding who he was and how my purpose works in tandem with him, changes how I walk through my life. Right? So now it's not a question of whether I succeed. It's a certainty. It's just a matter of me finding where the success is going to be found. Right? I know the card isn't, the deck isn't stacked against me. I'm stacked against the deck because I'm going to eventually win on this hand. All right. Or maybe not win on this hand, but I'm going to win in the game. And so it's with that and understanding that he is for me, he upholds in that, you walk with a totally different confidence. And I tell you what, people want that. People are invited to that. People are attracted to that. And I'll tell you, be wary of falling into a trap of complaint or blame, because there will be 2 or 3 people that will be ready to complain with you. And the tough thing about this time frame right now is that it's rampant all over the place, right? It's normal, but now it's just on video where everybody can see. And you know, our media, you're right, the news station, when was the last time you turned on the 5 o'clock news and felt good about what was happening in America? All right. It hasn't happened because they know we're addicted to negativity. So that's all they're going to preach. That's all they're going to put out there. And they're going to try to divide and rile you up even more because you become addicted to the screen and see what they're reporting is going on with the riots, with the racial injustice, with the division, all these different things. Instead, all right, shut it off, realize that you got a higher power that's for you, not against you, and go say what's up to your neighbor. And go see what they're doing, right? Say what's up to your wife or to your family and say, let's do something to make us bigger today. And I promise you, when you start taking steps like that, that's when your life starts exploding in a whole lot bigger ways. And on top of it, and you might be thinking like, all right, this, God's stuff is hokey nonsense. That's cool. I dare you to try it out, because I promise you'll see side effects happening in your business, right? Cash flow, sales, revenue are all side effects of what kind of business you bring to the table, what kind of person or character you bring to the table. Right now, there's lots of different nuances you could do to make those attributes better. But my business has grown 250% in the last 6 months because of what I bring to the table, and it's not on accident. I bring a ton of purpose to it. I outline it out. They know who I am. So if they don't want to work with me, they don't have to work with me. I'm okay with that, right? I want to work with people who are like-minded, who are goal-oriented, who want to get some things done. That's
awesome.
A lot. I give you long answers, man.
No, I love it. That's exactly what we need right now. So, and like, I That's another reason I started this podcast, was to get like people's stories out there that are like setting a new standard, I guess you could say, for like helping people, right? So like have you on now, you, like you said, you're bringing your purpose to the table. Like you want to work with like-minded people. I've had firefighters and like coaches from all sorts of different like aspects. Corey Gregory was on and he got to share his story of like him working with Arnold, because like they were like, he knows what he brings to the table and he knows it's going to fit with like the certain people he's going to work with, which is what brought him to like go to Arnold Schwarzenegger's house for Christmas every year, right? Like
That's
Anders
pretty awesome.
Varner from Barbell Shrugged was on, and he's like, yeah, the journey that I'm leading is like I bring this to the table and it gets me to meet these super cool people. Like he is one of the people that has worked out with John Cena, which like that's crazy, right? So what you're saying right now is definitely like what people need to hear, and to change like a lot of people's perspectives, because like I know a lot of people that are stuck maybe in a rut and they're complaining about things that are happening, but complaining doesn't really get you anywhere. You have to like start working towards fixing it. If you see a problem in the world, maybe don't fix the world, but like change your perspective, and then eventually something good will happen, if that makes any sense.
It totally is. Then you can't. The world can't be fixed on a granular level, right? It has to be minuscule in you, in your house, in your community, which leads to the world, which leads to the nation, which leads to these bigger impacts. And I tell you what, it's not necessarily. I don't think it's. I can't remember the verbiage you used, but it's not necessarily a new mold or a new trend or a new kind of thing, right? These people have been around forever. These people who are attracted, there's a reason there's a 1%, right? And there's a reason there's everybody else, because that 1% are the ones willing to separate themselves and get a laser focus and go attack and bring massive action to their whatever their goal is right now. Right? Everybody else is. That's what sucks about it, is so many people are walking around that are good people that are dead in their own life, don't realize. And so questions you should start asking yourself is, what am I about? What do I stand for? Foundationally, what am I? Right? And then what am I built for? And what is my purpose here? And this is a lot of people struggle for it. It doesn't have to be terribly clearly defined out the gate, all right? But what am I building towards? What is my wife in my life? What are my kids in my life? What am I responsible for stewarding in them, right? And it's understand it's to split, both contribute, but if I'm called to be the leader of my house, how am I leading them? And am I acting on my own just accord? Am I demanding more out of my wife than myself? You know, I think it's interesting because I get sick of doing dishes. I get sick of cleaning. I sick of doing all these things, you know, after I've just had a full day of work or given a message or something that takes a lot out of me that spiritually pours out that all of a sudden I'm drained after. But at the end of the day, I constantly remind myself, and that's to say, this is not perfect. We still have our own issues, but at the end of the day, I got to remind myself, do I want a clean house? Do I want to have a good relationship with my wife? Not just good, but awesome. Do I want to serve her? Is she worthy enough to be served? Absolutely. I chose her for my wife. That means I chose her to be somebody I'm willing to share my life with, and someone I'm willing to serve and do things for, not for someone to marry to do things for me. Right. And the thing is what happens is when you start doing all of those things and bringing a ton of value that is more than what you're worth, that starts breeding more starts coming from that. right? What happens when I start giving you respect? You respect me. When I share love with you, you share love with me, right? And so whatever you sow into the world is ultimately what you're going to reap. And so if you want to reap good things out of this world, you better be sowing a whole lot of good things into this world, 10 times more than you think you need to. All right. In the same way, if all you're seeing is negativity, if all you're seeing is hate, if all you're seeing is injustice, if all you're seeing are these things, pretty much that's all you're consuming. I can guarantee that. If that's all you're consuming, that's all you're going to be consumed with. So that's all you're going to see. So that's all you're going to be going after. Right. And there's been some people that have preyed on our communities off division. That's what they've prayed. A lot of our political landscape is like that. Right? People, this Republican Democrat thing, and I have my own views for sure, but you have two parties that are just pitting against each other all the time, and it creates a ton of division. And if you don't see it my way, you're wrong, and it's not going to get anything done. And so, and I get it. That's why we have a voting structure like we do. But you know, I guess what I'm trying to get at with is you got to drive down to what you're about in this life before you can ever try to approach fixing somebody else. And that's the tough thing about this is people don't want to dive into their own life. Right? People don't want to do that at all. And so what's easier than diving and fixing what's wrong with me is going and fixing your problem and telling you what's wrong with you and telling you what kind of crazy you have in your life and how you're wrong and how you've done everything wrong and you won't do everything right because you've done all this wrong before, right? But that doesn't build anybody up, but it makes me feel a whole lot better in the meantime for that moment, right? Because now I've told you ever met anybody who says, I'm going to give them a piece of my mind, right? Ask the person next time, did it do anything? Well, no, but it made me feel pretty good. All right, did it do anything? Because in that moment, it hasn't done anything. Right? You might have put a little bigger wedge between you and that person, spoke your mind, but it doesn't do anything. All right, but if I can go up to you and I can greet you with love and see what's going on, brother, and hey, let's talk for real. I want to gain some perspective. I have my own opinion, right? But I want to see what yours are. And then, okay, let's talk about what's conflicting in that. Conflict is not bad. Abrasion is supposed to make you smoother. It's supposed to make you better, right? People don't realize. We're talking about being the salt in the light of the earth right now. Salt is very abrasive, so it smooths out surfaces. And so, you know, we're supposed to be continually getting better. If you want to make this nation better, you have to make yourself better. Until you make yourself better, nothing will get better.
There you go. There it is, folks.
You got me preaching right now. So.
I love it. I absolutely love it. But one thing that I've got out of this is like, you have to like work inward before you can work outward, right? And that's a big thing that you're preaching to the choir right now, which is awesome. Like right now, what you're talking about, I think, is what people really need to hear, especially in the day where like anything you want to see, you can just like open your phone and be like, hey, what's going on over there today? And be like, oh, it's still terrible. All right. What's going on over there today? Nope, still terrible. So thank you for everything you're saying today. It's absolutely wonderful.
No, I appreciate it, man. The social media is a double-edged sword. I mean, anybody listen, are you using it or is it using you? That's a big takeaway for social media is it is a fantastic tool for business, for networking, for getting a message across. But it is also a powerful tool to get you wrapped up in what the enemy wants to control you with.
Yeah.
And if you continually go, now I've done it lots of times, but I constantly got to bring myself away. What am I doing? And I put my phone down, bring my attention back to what I'm going after. Right. And so cut out the distractions. That's definitely a big one in our society to make sure we're checking.
Yeah. I think people need to like delete Instagram and just re-download Twitter because it gives you 140 characters and that's it.
Well, like even then, this is why I say go talk with your neighbor. Over 90% of communication is nonverbal. Right? We're talking. That means I've had lots of times where I've texted, Facebook messaged, emailed, and somebody has taken it completely out of context, which is the world right now, right? Taking it completely out of context. And what happens? I love the Key and Peele, the comedians, right? I love their text episode. If anybody doesn't know that, you go Google and you go look on YouTube, Key and Peele, the text conversation. And you can, when you hear the intonations or the fluctuation of my voice, it adds a completely different message to whatever text you're bringing to the table, right? And so it's like, hey, Cory, you want to go out to eat? You're like, yeah, I don't care. No big deal, right? You're like, hey, Cory, you want to go out to eat? I don't care. All right, when it's totally different, and people read it how they want to read it into their mind, or however it comes into their mind. And so even Twitter can be potentially dangerous because you're reading it in your own voice. Right? You're reading it with your own judgment. And I would, same thing. Don't go into Twitter battles. Don't go do that stuff. You don't hear somebody's voice when they're doing that. Or I have had close friends who have come at me about different views, and I'll immediately reach out and say, hey, let's go eat, man. Let's go get coffee. Let's go talk. And I tell you what, it is a totally different conversation because now you're digging in each other's views from a pissed off point of view. And so they're all good. They're all dangerous.
Yeah.
Make sure you're using it for the purpose that you want to use it.
Yeah. Just that.
Yeah.
So who helped you find like this insane work ethic that you had? Because when we met, we were the only people at the Killcliff party that were over 6 feet tall. And I was like, oh, hey, because you're taller than I am. And we just like hit it off right away. And then you introduced me to some pretty cool people. And then like every time I walked past the Killcliff booth the rest of the weekend, like you were the first person I would hear talking to somebody. And I was like, it's Cory. Guys, I met him last night. Let's go chit chat. But who like helped you find this work ethic that you have that like helped you like make it to the NFL and then past the NFL, like have your own successful financial business and like success in like speaking to people? Who helped you like find that?
Well, I think it was more modeled than anything else.
Okay.
That was one thing about my parents. They are badass workers.
Okay.
And you won't find two people that work harder. And so my dad was a veterinarian, primarily large animals, cattle, mostly race horses actually. And he had his practice. He worked around the clock. And so emergency calls in the middle of the night, he got up and he went. It didn't matter what time. And so when we were visiting with Dad, we moved back and forth between Mom and Dad. We're with Dad, we're on farm calls all the time. And so we're seeing him work all the time. We're at work all the time. And so same thing on the other side with Mom. Mom at one point had 3 different jobs. And I didn't know the finances of our household at that time, but it could have been to make ends meet. But she worked like crazy, always at work, long hours, and a lot of jobs. And so that was modeled for me. And so then the third, the kind of trifecta piece of that was, I mentioned coaches in my life were a huge influence on me. So I remember in 7th grade when the first coach gave me a first little piece of encouragement, told me, good job. I was a running back in a drill. I was a little chubby running back, but I was just doing a drill. I jumped in, grabbed the football, and I ran over. I just ran really hard. Just decided one time just to give a really good effort. I didn't have any aggression, just a good effort. That's all it was. Well, I was a big body, big kid, and gave a good effort and ran this guy over. Well, the coach, he comes up with a ton of like high fives and good jobs and all these things. Well, that was like a piece of candy to me. And so I wanted more of that. So because he positively reinforced that behavior, I went and attacked that behavior like crazy. And so all of a sudden I'm mad effort. And this is what I encourage to a lot of parents who have young kids, because I've been asked the question several times, hey, how do I get my kid to be more aggressive? I go, well, you don't. That's a natural progression that takes place. Focus on, and that's what my wife is just making. Focus on their effort, because that's what they can control, right? And aggression will come at all different stages of somebody's life, but learning how to harness that aggression will be the most key thing. So if you get them to harness their effort first, right, and focus that targeted area, everything else will start falling in place to that effort, and then you can start molding even more. And so that was huge with me. And speaking to that, I didn't really start developing any sort of aggression in sports till my junior year of high school, to give you an idea when that started coming in for me. But before that, it was my parents modeling it for me, and then coaches reinforcing it like crazy. So it was cool because that reinforcement, then my parents saw it on the wrestling mat, on the football field, wherever I was at, they saw it. Because at the home, I was just a fat kid, being lazy. But when they started seeing it practically play out, they started reinforcing it. And so all of a sudden, I had more and more of that, and it ended up building in a huge way. So, okay, I earned a scholarship off of that. I go play in the NFL. I was undrafted, but I was able to earn my spots on the team. And this is what I love about athletes is the dualistic mentality or dualistic mind or framing of the mind body, right? You can train one to train the other. You can train one to train the body to train the mind, train the mind to train the body. And in athletics, the IQ level, and it might not be, we usually get the stereotype of the dumb jock, but the IQ level of an athlete is typically their platform or foundation for capability of learning far surpasses the normal person in our world. And that's because they've conditioned themselves to learn at a faster rate. What other sport or place besides sports you have to go where you have to manage everything in a 5 to 10 second period, right? So like football, for example, I run a play, might last 5 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds. Right, I have to come back to the huddle and I have to go do another play. Well, the problem is what if I screwed up that play? Well, now I'm dealing with all this emotions in my head of like I screwed up. I potentially suck as a player. Coach might scream at me. All these different things, but I got to get over it all in less than a minute to get to the next play. Right, and so where people cave is when they take themselves out of the game, because it becomes too much for them and the defeat takes them over. Well, athletes, it's that cycle has to force itself to rinse and repeat all the time, that we condition ourselves to be able to get over the failures a whole lot faster than anybody else. So what happens is my learning curve is at a much faster clip. And so the same thing happened when I got into the financial business. I was an active part of my portfolio when my advisor was dealing with me. But when it came to being in as a professional in the business, I knew I could get faster. So I took when it came to the licensing exam, I took the recommended time frame and cut it in half for studying. So I think the recommended time frame was typically 60 days. I would set the test in 30, and I would lock myself in the room and go to town. And, a bunch of energy drinks and coffee. And so and what happened is all of my exams I passed on the first try. Now, no big deal if I would have had to try again, but I know my learning curve is way faster than a normal person. So because of that, I can go execute at a lot faster rate. And so that's kind of a long story to go back to, the beginning of where those places come from. When you're able to take that kind of foundation of action, learning, and hard work, all of that stems back from my parents and my coaches.
Awesome. That's fantastic. No, I love it. I love the really long answers.
It's long-winded for sure.
No, it's very good and it's very insightful. But I know you have a hard out at 10 a.m. So I'll ask one or two more quick questions just so that we don't get into your next call. But what are some of your plans for the future that you're allowed to talk about right now? Maybe business-wise, personally, so maybe get back into fitness-ish, like go back to CrossFit Games whenever they're allowed to get back, like, to Madison, stuff like that.
Oh, well, right now, I mean, our family, where we're at, my wife, Megan, she's taking care of the kids, which we're really fortunate for that, to have a stay-at-home parent. That's a big deal. So pretty lucky for that. So staying at home, loving on them like crazy. And so, our vision in the business is to build out Pro Capital. Right now, I'm a one-man shop. And my intention long term is to build out a team. So guys that are similar mindset, similar work ethic, similar learning capacity, where they can come in and they set their mind to something and they wreck shop and they go right away. And the learning curve is not very long, right? And so I want to bring those high character, high performing individuals in. They're not easy to keep, that's for sure. You gotta. When you get one of those people, if you're a business owner watching or a leader watching this, you get those, you need to keep them, you need to pay them, all right? They're worth the spend. And so, but my goal here is to build it out. And so one way that I build it out is I do a lot of events with this. And this is, I'll do in-person events. Obviously, we had to curb that because of the pandemic, but in-person events, educational events, talking different things. I did a webinar a few weeks ago on retirement, the risks in retirement and the methodologies and how we combat that. And this next one I'll have next month is just a social event where I'll invite a bunch of clients and their friends and build out the brand of me and my company even more. And so I continue to have those to build out my impact on this community and my potential business in a big way. And those gain a lot of traction for me. They do really well. Why is that? That's because people get to hear my voice. It's from kind of an authority position when I'm the one running the show. All right. But people get to hear my voice. They got to understand what I'm about a little bit and what's behind the curtain and what I'm doing. And so a lot of people are either attracted to that or not. And that's okay. It's usually a quick decision. That's what I'm building out long term. I have other branches of my company that I'm going to keep under the fold for now, but I have a grander vision in mind. But right now, I'm building out this Pro Capital Wealth Management, and for my speaking, I kind of let that be its own animal. I'll have some conversations where they need people. I'll give them, I'll let them know, say, hey, let's come in and we'll talk and we'll brainstorm some ideas, but that's not my full time. That's where, people usually investigate some sort of videos that I posted or other talks that they've heard me at, or maybe one of these conversations where they're like, man, I need to bring some insight to my team. And so that's where that usually happens. And so we can usually get in and you might do a whole message and then dive in practically a few points to really how do we walk that message out. And those are a ton of fun. So I love those to death. But I still work out, talking about that. I have my garage gym and my buddy's coming over at noon today. We're going to beat up the weights a little bit and have some fun, man. My body's not what it used to be. That is for sure. But we'll see about getting back to the games. My wife went to school in Madison at Wisconsin there. So,
okay.
Yeah, she loves that. But, as far as that goes, there's no real plans. But, my main focus is family and my business. So building that. So, fly around a little bit to see clients, but I also do a whole lot of these Zoom calls.
Awesome.
With people, so.
Yeah, I love the fact that like Zoom exists so that we can do these things.
It brings a totally different dynamic and accessibility to people that we haven't had before that I think is really good. I mean, shoot, Zoom. I don't know if you guys. Zoom went from about $60 a share to the other day reached over $220 a share. So
I know I bought stock in it the day I downloaded it. So I was like, I'm gonna hop on this real quick. Bought a little bit, and I was like, and skyrocket. But
that's awesome.
yeah, did you see what happened to Spotify?
I didn't see what happened to Spotify.
So,
I'm sure the downloads went crazy.
So Joe Rogan signed $100 million contract, and like overnight, their stock just went up. And I was like, and hop on that. Because September 1st, they're offering video services just so they can hold all of his video podcasts. I was like, and September 1st, their stock's going to rise again. It's like, let's just dive into this real quick. But last question before you go, what books would you recommend for people to read to learn things or get some insight?
There's a bunch of good ones. I would say the biggest ones that have been impactful to me have usually been a little more soulful.
Okay.
Right? A little more dream or purpose driven for the life. And so usually something trying to drive you to action of some sort. And so my favorite book, well, I'm blanking all of a sudden, John Eldredge is the author. Wild at Heart is one of my most favorite books in the world. Wild at Heart by John Eldredge. And I've read it 3 times, and it goes into really kind of the definition of men and what we're made to do in this life, and why so many struggle in this life or in different relationships or different or facets of it. And so I would encourage a lot of, especially your men. I mean, great read for women too. He makes one for him and his wife wrote a book for women also, but especially for men as you're coming up, understanding there's I remember lots of parts in the book, but 2 specifically. One of my favorite lines was, a woman doesn't want a really nice guy. A woman wants a lover and a fighter. Right? Somebody who's going to love them to death like crazy and is willing to fight for them, not just on the street, but in the house when the slow enemy's creeping in and trying to divide their marriage. Right? Are you willing to step out of your comfort zone and fight for your marriage? Go to counseling or do some things that you never did before to produce a result that you have never gotten before. That was huge. And then there was another portion of the book that I love that is so critical, I think, in this world, because it talks about the segue of boy to man. And what, if you think about it, did you have a clear introduction into manhood? Like, was there a time where your family, your mom and dad, had said, now you're a man. Now you have some responsibilities. Now you have these, and they start speaking that into you. And what I love about it is he used a story to illustrate this, but it was I want to say it was like the 13th, 15th, or 16th birthday, something like that, of a young boy. His dad took him camping and told him, this is a man's camping trip. Only men are allowed on here. And what happened was cool. It speaks to a lot of guys that struggle with the relationship with their mom. But their mom doesn't want to allow the boy to be a man. So they keep treating him like a boy. So this is why a lot of guys have struggled with the relationship with their mother. Well, in this story, what's really neat is when we ask the question, was there a clear-cut time where your parents are introducing you into manhood, calling you into the man that you're supposed to be? All right, because we're supposed to be men, not little boys. Handle our business like a man, not like a little boy, and cry and complain and blame everybody else, okay? But in this story was when they got back from the camping trip, the mom reintroduced herself to her own son as, nice to meet you, Mr. So-and-so, Mr. Smith. And the reaction from the boy was, all of a sudden, she called me Mr. And so his chest is out. He's all proud. He's all feeling manly, feeling good about himself, right? Well, I know that's one moment, but how many moments in your life are you calling not just yourself, but are actively as a parent or calling other people into manhood, or other men into their manhood, into their adulthood. Right? We're supposed to be there. And so many men don't have that ushering into adulthood, that they get left in this boyhood state. So and I know anybody I can ask would agree with me. We have a lot of men that are actually boys. And so if we can start ushering that into it, that's a huge deal. But anyways, Wild at Heart, John Eldredge, awesome book. Two others that I love, really, Traveler's Gift. The Traveler's Gift is amazing. Goes back in time, has a lot of big moments or big key figures in history, and goes through their mentalities and what led to them being such key figures in history. So Traveler's Gift is the second one. And the third one I just finished not too long ago, which was I Declare War from Levi Lusko. And that he's a pastor out of Montana, but I Declare War is basically all about I declare war against the enemy inside of myself, right? Against the version of you that you hate, that you don't want to be a part of, right? The guy that's destructive to your life and other people around you, right? But give weight to kind of like the good and bad wolf, right? Give weight to the good wolf, the one that wants to fight for his family in the deepest way, in the most soulful way, in a huge, impactful way. So that's my third book, Wild at Heart, Traveler's Gift, and I Declare War. 3 big books right there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Cory. It was an absolute honor to have you on the show.
I appreciate it, Daniel. Good seeing you, brother.
Good to see you too. You take care. Have fun with all the things you have to do the rest of the day.
All right. Thanks, man. You too.
You're welcome. Bye.
We'll see ya.